The alien Empress got trapped in the maintenance hatch. And I couldn't stop laughing. Your radiance, if you keep tightening every muscle in your body, this ring is never going to let go. The words slipped out of Leo before his survival instincts could tackle them. The green-skinned woman frozen in the gravlock field twisted just enough to glare over her shoulder. Her eyes, smoky violet and furious, could have peeled paint from the bulkhead. "Engineer," she hissed, "I am High Empress Neriel Cathar, sovereign of 9 systems. Choose your phrasing with care, and your angle." The ring of humming alloy around her hips pulsed faintly, holding her in an absurd half-crouch. The rest of her looked as though she'd stepped out of a royal portrait. Silver hair piled into a crown of braids, golden diadem gleaming, emerald skin smooth and unblemished. From the waist down, however, her flowing black and gold skirt and everything under it were very firmly clamped inside a faulty cargo bay gravlock. Docking Bay 3 of the Crown of Dawn, her mobile palace, had been immaculate 5 minutes ago. Now it looked like panic in slow motion. Guards in obsidian armor lined the walls, staring fixedly at the ceiling. Aides and officers hovered nearby, whispering frantically into wrist comms, none daring to get within arm's reach of their trapped ruler. Neriel's public tours of the lower decks were meant to inspire the crew. Today, the inspiration had come in the form of a safety violation, a miscalibrated grav ring, and one very unfortunate hemline. Leo Hart, human technician and chronic bad decision, had been dragged in by 2 security officers who looked like they'd rather manhandle a live reactor core. He'd expected a stuck cargo container. He had not expected her. Now he knelt behind the Empress of 9 systems, examining the glowing ring that had swallowed half her gown. The gravlock field shimmered faintly around the fabric, buzzing with unstable energy. "Yeah," Leo murmured, scratching at the stubble along his jaw. "That's a mess." "Explain!" Neriel snapped. "Short version?" He tapped the ring with one gloved knuckle. This model was designed before anyone decided ornamental capes were operational hazards. The field caught your skirt, overloaded, and froze in failsafe. It thinks you're cargo. A horrified breath sucked in from at least 3 people. Neriel's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. "I am not cargo. Right now the ring disagrees, Your Radiance." He heard someone choke on a laugh and immediately turn it into a cough. Leo kept his eyes on the machinery and tried not to think too hard about the fact that the most powerful woman in the sector was stuck in what amounted to a glowing metal hula hoop directly in front of his face. Great first impression. "Why has this not been resolved already?" Neriel demanded. Her chief of security, a broad-shouldered Threxan, whose tusks trembled, cleared his throat. "The field is unstable, Your Radiance. Any attempt to brute force it risks, disassembly." Leo translated. "Blast it open, and you might separate the Empress from more than her wardrobe." "So you called a human," Neriel said, disgust curling around the last word. "Protocol dictates the most experienced grav systems specialist on board," the security chief said. "At present, that is Engineer Leo Hart." "Lucky me," Leo muttered. Neriel heard him. "You find this situation amusing?" "I find it preventable," he said. "Who signed off on running an older grav ring this close to the throne ship's tour route?" Several officers suddenly discovered fascinating data on their wrist displays. Leo sighed and set his toolbox down, the magnetic clamps clicking against the deck. His work clothes were a study in contrast to her regalia: brown utility jumpsuit smeared with oil, sleeves pushed up, throat unzipped just enough to prove he ignored dress code whenever possible. His hair did that half-intentional, half-permanent messy thing that came from crawling through conduits more often than showers. He stepped into the humming circle, as close as politeness and physics allowed. The heat of the grav field prickled against his skin. The ring squeezed her hips and lower back, fabric bunched and trapped, crimson and gold embroidery vanishing into the glow. He tried very hard not to look at the way the mishap had left her bent forward, braced against the wall, muscles in her back and arms flexing like carved jade. "Okay," he said briskly. "Ground rules. I'm going to fix the malfunctioning ring. In the process, I may need to touch the metal, maybe the fabric. I am not, repeat, not trying to touch the Empress. If I do by accident, I'd appreciate not being spaced. You assume much, she replied. I assumed my day would involve coolant valves, he said. Yet here we are. The faintest crack appeared in her fury, more incredulous than anything. You speak to me as though I were a junior officer. I talk like this when machinery is angry, Leo said. You just happen to be sharing space with the machinery. Behind them, someone whispered, He's dead, in a tone of morbid awe. Leo pulled a compact scanner from his belt and passed it slowly along the ring. Numbers flickered over the display. He whistled low. Fields locked at maximum. No remote override. Power junctions fused. Whoever installed this never did a full diagnostic. Can you release it? Niriel asked. Probably, he said. Her fingers tightened on the wall. Define probably. Better odds than letting the nav computer try, Leo replied honestly. But there's a complication. Of course there is, she muttered. The grav mesh isn't just holding your gown, Leo said. It's wrapped around the underlayers, too. The fabric's woven with metallic threads, right? It resists energy weapons, Niriel said. Yeah, that's currently biting us, he said. The field has tangled itself around every bit of cloth it can find. I can't just dump the charge. If it collapses fast, it'll cinch tight before releasing and you'll have a very bad day. Several guards made strangled noises. What are your options? She asked, each word clipped. 1. Cut the fabric, relieve the tension, then discharge the ring safely, Leo said. No. Her answer was absolute. He'd expected that. The gown wasn't just expensive. It was ceremonial, black and shimmering, embroidered in gold sigils that marked her as chosen by 9 worlds. Destroying it in public would be admitting vulnerability. Option 2, he continued. We keep the fabric intact. I manually adjust the internal clamps, bleed off the field, and slide the ring back without cutting anything. That sounds preferable. He nodded. It also requires me to get much closer than any of us are currently comfortable with. The tolerances are tight, and the access port is exactly where you don't want it to be. Niriel closed her eyes for a heartbeat, gathering what Leo recognized as the last fragments of her patience. When she opened them, they were steady. You are sworn to Imperial service, she said. I signed a bunch of forms about safety procedures and not licking reactors, he said. Pretty sure this wasn't on page 3. Consider this an addendum, she replied. Proceed, Engineer Hart. You will remain professional. Ma'am, I haven't even thought about being anything else, he said quickly, which earned him a skeptical arch of her brows. He eased closer, palms flat against the cool alloy of the ring. Sparks tingled along his fingertips, the field protesting his interference. The smell of ozone mixed with the faint spice of her perfume. First adjustment might tug a little, he warned. Try not to fight it. The more you tense, the harder the field grips. I am not tensing, she said. Your muscles would like to disagree, Leo murmured. He slipped a narrow probe into the seam where metal met cloth, feeling desperately for the first clamp. The ring vibrated under his touch. Niriel inhaled sharply. Just the metal, he said immediately. Promise. If you lie, she breathed, there will not be enough void in the galaxy to hide you. Understood. Leo rummaged in his kit, laying out a line of instruments on the deck. Micro-welder, field spanner, flex probe, a small aerosol can with a long nozzle. Niriel looked down in horror. Those crude things are intended for ships, not rulers. Ships, hatches, grav rings, stubborn door locks, Leo said. Physics doesn't care who's stuck. What is in the canister? She demanded. Conductive lubricant, he said. Helps metal surfaces slide instead of seize. Smells like citrus. Makes everything less grabby. You will not spray your Empress, she said, each syllable sharp enough to draw blood. He sighed dramatically. Of course not, Your Radiance. I would never dream of improving the performance of a life-threatening mechanism with industry-tested compounds. A guard somewhere behind them coughed to hide a laugh. Leo shook the can just to hear the hiss. The guards flinched. Nyriel's fingers dug into the wall. "Cease that noise," she snapped. Okay. He set it aside. "No lubricant. We do this the hard way." "Apparently there is no simple way where humans are concerned," she muttered. He crouched again, sliding the flex probe deeper into the ring. The scanner hummed with changing readings. "So, your radiance," he said conversationally. "On a completely unrelated note, how attached are you to the concept of gravity?" "What?" "Because this ring is tied to the docking bay's grav grid. If I misalign something by a millimeter, we get a temporary localized failure. Nothing major. Just, a brief sensation of falling into the ceiling." All the blood drained from several officers' faces. Nyriel did not move. "Do not misalign anything." "I'd really rather not," Leo agreed, tongue between his teeth as he twisted the probe. He heard the distinctive click of a disengaging clamp. The field around the fabric softened just a hair. "Good sign," he murmured. "What happened?" she asked. "One of the inner locks let go," he said. "Field tension dropped by maybe 5%. "That hardly sounds sufficient." "It's step 1, he said. "You don't unjam a grav ring in one move unless you enjoy catastrophic failures." "You speak as though from experience." "I once turned an entire water processing plant into a 0G aquarium," Leo admitted. "But everyone lived, and the fish loved it." "You inspire no confidence whatsoever," she said. "I'm still here," he pointed out, "which suggests my failure rate is lower than my survival rate." To his surprise, the corner of her painted mouth twitched just once before she crushed it. "Focus, human." "Yes, your radiance." The second clamp proved trickier. It sat just beneath a knot of embroidered fabric where her skirt had twisted inside the ring. Leo had to wedge both hands along the inner edge, fingers brushing delicate cloth that felt far too luxurious for a cargo bay. "Try shifting your weight just a little to the left," he said. "Carefully, like you're dodging a tax audit." "I do not dodge audits," she said. "I order them." "Right, so imagine you ordered yourself out of the way," he said. She exhaled sharply but complied, easing her hips a fraction of a centimeter. The ring hummed in protest but didn't spike. "Good," he said. "Hold that." He levered the clamp, muscles straining. The metal groaned. Somewhere deep in the mechanism, stress built to a breaking point. There was a sharp, unmistakable rip. Everyone froze. Nyriel's voice came out very, very quiet. "What was that sound? Engineer heart?" Leo said, staring at the shredded thread he could now see. "One of the fabric layers has chosen to pursue independence." "In plain speech," she insisted. "Something tore," he admitted. A modest bit. Nothing catastrophic." "How modest?" she asked. Leo considered the alarming wedge of air he could now feel where there had very definitely been no air before. "On a scale from loose stitch to catastrophic wardrobe event, we're sitting at strategically unfortunate." Her shoulders locked. "You are not to turn your head. At all." "Wouldn't dream of it," Leo said quickly, keeping his eyes on the ring. "I am now a loyal servant of this wall texture. I shall never forget it." Behind them, armor creaked as every guard turned more firmly toward the ceiling. Nyriel sucked in a slow, furious breath. "If even one person so much as glances—" "Pretty sure they're praying to the ventilation ducts," Leo said. "Look, the tear actually helps. Less tension on the fabric means I can move the ring without strangling your, regal circumference." A beat of silence. "Choose your next words carefully," she warned. "Structural geometry," he blurted. "Your, personal geometry. Look, the point is, there's more give now." "That gown was handwoven by the artisans of Vexa Prime," she said. "Its loss is a diplomatic affront." "I'll write them an apology," Leo said. Dear Masters of the Loom, I defended your Empress from homicidal hardware. Please redirect your complaints to the manufacturer of Model 47 grav rings. Despite everything, a strangled noise escaped her that might almost have been the beginning of a laugh. She killed it quickly. Continue. By now, Leo was damp with sweat, not entirely from the malfunctioning field. Working inches away from the Empress's trapped form, with execution as a plausible outcome of failure, was not a calm environment. He swallowed and studied the schematics on his scanner. All right, the last locking pin is jammed behind the main stabilizer coil. There's no way to reach it from here. Meaning? Neriel asked. Meaning I have to get underneath, he said. An uneasy quiet settled over the bay. Underneath what, precisely? She asked. The housing, he said, which happens to be located between your legs and the deck. Blame the designers, not me. You cannot be serious, she said flatly. Trust me, I wish I weren't, Leo said. If there were any other route, I'd take it. But without popping that pin, the field won't fully release, and we'll be here until the heat death of the galaxy. Her jaw clenched. She stared at the far wall as though it had personally betrayed her. Summon another technician, she ordered. There isn't one with my clearance on this deck, he said. And even if there were, they'd refuse. You terrify them. I am their Empress, she said coldly. I am meant to. Yeah, Leo replied quietly. Problem is, terror isn't useful when someone has to crawl into an awkward place and risk getting yelled at. He let that hang in the air. The seconds stretched. The hum of the grav ring pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Finally she spoke, voice lower. This is beneath me, she said. Technically, yes, he said gently. That's the issue. Her shoulders shook once, either in outrage or reluctant recognition. Very well. Do what must be done, Engineer Hart. But if your eyes stray once, you will learn the meaning of creative execution. I will be the picture of restraint, he promised. He lay on his back, sliding into the narrow gap under the ring. From the outside, the image had to be absurd. A human in a stained jumpsuit vanishing beneath a glowing hoop and an immobile alien monarch. Do not narrate this to yourself, she muttered. Too late, he said. My brain writes disaster reports automatically. He reached up into the mechanism, fingertips groping for the stubborn pin. The air smelled like hot metal, and her perfume, some floral note he couldn't name because botany had never tried to kill him. Almost there, he murmured. Do not use that phrase unless success is imminent, she said through her teeth. Yes, your radiance. Leo's fingers found the pin. It was wedged deep, fused by a surge of energy. He wrapped his gloved hand around the narrow shaft of alloy and twisted. The ring shrieked like a wounded animal. The field spat sparks. Neriel gasped, entire body flinching. Hold still, he shouted from somewhere below her. If you jerk, this thing will clamp shut again. She froze enough that the grav field stabilized. Leo braced one boot against the deck and yanked the pin sideways. It fought him, then tore free with a metallic clunk that rattled his teeth. For half a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the grav ring's safety protocol decided it had had enough. The field collapsed in a rush. The ring sprang outward, flinging trapped cloth free like a slingshot. The sudden release hurled Neriel backward, momentum snapping her out of her forced crouch. Leo had just enough time to realize she was falling directly toward his face. They collided in a chaotic tangle of limbs, fabric, and dropped tools. The deck slammed into his back. Air fled his lungs in a single undignified oof. For a few stunned seconds, all he could see was green skin, silver hair, and torn black silk. Get your hands off me, Neriel shouted, voice several octaves higher than usual. I'm trying, Leo wheezed. You're everywhere. He managed to roll, helping her scramble to her feet without looking. Anywhere he shouldn't. The remnants of her gown clung valiantly to their task, but had definitely lost the war of coverage. Guards, she snapped. Turn, around. They were already facing the nearest wall with religious devotion. Leo pushed himself upright, ribs protesting. Well, he said breathlessly, on the bright side, You are no longer part of the docking bay infrastructure. Neriel looked down at her shredded gown, then at him. Her expression went through at least 4 stages: horror, humiliation, fury, and something like reluctant relief. "You find this humorous," she accused. "A little," he admitted. "Mostly I'm glad you're not still welded to a death hoop." "You destroyed an irreplaceable ceremonial garment," she said. "I also prevented your lower half from being crushed into green paste," he said. "Call it a trade." She stared at him long enough that he considered making peace with the idea of being atomized. Then, to his utter astonishment, the edges of her lips curled. "Your audacity is intolerable," she said softly. And yet, he prompted, because apparently he had a death wish. "And yet you have freed your Empress," she finished. "It would be ungracious to kill you outright." He bowed, awkwardly, because his back hurt. "I'll try not to make a habit of it, Your Radiance." "You will not speak of this incident to anyone," she ordered. "Cross my heart," he said, tapping his chest. "Sworn to secrecy. This entire debacle will live only in my nightmares." "And in security footage," one of the officers blurted before catching himself. Neriel turned slowly. "What footage?" "Ah," the officer squeaked. "The automated surveillance." Leo raised his wrist pad. "Already wiped," he lied smoothly. "Late-stage bug in the logging software. Tragic, really." Her eyes narrowed. "You tampered with Imperial records?" "I prevented blackmail," he said. "You're welcome." Leo expected to be arrested within the hour. Instead, he got a summons. It arrived while he was back in his cramped maintenance alcove, scrubbing grav dust from his hands and pretending not to replay the last 30 minutes on loop. "Engineer Leo Hart," the calm voice of an aide said over his comm. "Her Radiance Neriel Cathar requires your presence on the Starlight deck, immediately." Leo looked at the half-disassembled coolant pump in front of him, then at the door. "Am I allowed to bring flowers, or is this more of an execution vibe?" The channel cut without comment. "Right," he muttered. "Execution vibe it is." The Starlight deck was a different universe from the bowels of the ship. Where maintenance corridors were narrow and cluttered, this level was all sweeping curves, luminous panels, and polished metal reflecting the infinite black outside. The main viewing hall overlooked a nebula-slashed-star field, glass curving. Overhead, in a dome, Neriel stood near the window, a dark silhouette carved against the glow of distant suns. Tonight's gown was simpler, deep green that matched her skin, embroidered only at the edges, as if she'd chosen practicality over spectacle. Her silver hair flowed loose down her back, crown set lightly atop it. Guards flanked the door as Leo entered, shoulders squared, boots suddenly too loud on the immaculate floor. He stopped a respectful distance away and bowed just enough to keep his head. "Your Radiance." "Engineer Hart," she said, her voice cool but no longer icy. "Approach." He obeyed, hands clasped behind his back so she couldn't see them fidget. "I have reviewed the reports," she said. "The gravlock malfunction, the structural risk, the tearing." He winced internally. "For what it's worth, I did everything possible to preserve the gown." She waved that aside. "Cloth may be remade. Lives cannot. According to your logged metrics, you prevented the field from imploding by less than 1/10 of a second." "Guess I got lucky," he said. Her gaze sharpened. "Do you always treat near-death calculations so casually?" "Lady, I fix things that explode for a living," he said. "If I freaked out every time the math got thin, I'd never leave my bunk." Something like reluctant respect flickered across her face. "Your irreverence is either courage or stupidity." "Usually both," he admitted. "And yet," she continued, "you acted when my own officers hesitated. You spoke to me without choking on your own rank anxiety. You risked my wrath and your life to repair a system you did not break." He blinked. "Is this leading somewhere, or am I supposed to bow periodically?" She almost smiled. "Almost. You are insolent, Leo Hart. Occupational hazard. But effective," she said. He waited. "I have decided," Neriel said at last, "to assign you permanently to the Crown of Dawn's primary systems team. You will serve as personal liaison between my office and engineering. When my ship suffers an indignity, you will correct it." "You're promoting me to court mechanic?" he asked. "To Imperial Systems Specialist," she corrected, "with access to restricted decks and increased stipend." "Do I get a badge?" he asked. "I've always wanted a badge." A single elegant brow lifted. "You risk demotion with every sentence." "Still feels worth it," he said. This time she didn't bother hiding the quiet laugh that slipped out. Promotion looked different than Leo had expected. On paper, his duties were simple: oversee maintenance on critical systems, coordinate with command staff, keep the palace ship from falling apart. In practice, it meant he now wandered through spaces no human usually saw. The courtiers noticed. They watched him as he passed through the marbled halls of the upper decks, their jeweled garments whispering. Their expressions ranged from disapproval to outright horror that a human in a stained jumpsuit now had clearance chimes singing for him. "Is that the one?" someone whispered behind a fan. "Yes, the grav ring incident," another replied. "I heard she sat on him," a third muttered, scandalized. Leo pretended not to hear, and double-checked a diagnostic panel instead. The doors ahead opened with the polite chime reserved for high-ranking visitors. Inside the Empress's command salon, Neriel stood over a holomap, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, revealing forearms dusted with faint golden freckles. Officers crowded around her, but the moment Leo entered, every gaze snapped his way. "Engineer," she said without looking up. "Report." "Stabilizers on Deck 6 are running hot," he said, slotting smoothly into his role. "Nothing dangerous yet, but if whoever installed that grav ring is still employed, I'd like to meet them with a wrench." One of the older admirals stiffened. "You will not speak of Imperial infrastructure, so—" Neriel lifted a hand. Silence fell. "Let him," she said. "If our systems are flawed, I wish to know." Leo almost felt sorry for the admirals. Almost. He stepped closer to the holomap. Stars and energy lanes floated above the table. The Crown of Dawn glowed at the center like a jewel. "The failure pattern on that ring bothered me," he said. "It didn't drift out of calibration. Someone altered the safety thresholds manually." Neriel's eyes narrowed. "Sabotage?" "Could be incompetence," Leo said. "But the override code came from an officer's console." Murmurs rippled through the room. "Trace it," she ordered, quietly. "I will not have panic. Or gossip." Her gaze flicked to him, sharp. "Can you do this, Engineer Hart? Find out who tried to turn your dock into a slapstick execution?" he said. "Absolutely." Several officers winced at his phrasing. Neriel's lips twitched again. "Report only to me," she added. "I will decide what is done with the culprit." Leo nodded, suddenly very aware that beneath her earlier embarrassment, she was still utterly lethal. "Yes, Your Radiance." As he turned to go, she said softly, just loud enough for him to hear, "Do be careful. There may be more gravlocks waiting to embrace you." He glanced back. "If any of them grab me, I expect equal levels of concern, ma'am." "You would not look as dignified," she replied dryly. "You'd be surprised," he said, and fled before common sense caught up. Leo followed the trail of override codes through the ship's backbone, control nodes, diagnostic logs, nested permissions. Most of it was dull. Some of it was worrying. He'd just traced a suspicious cluster of commands to the life support matrix when an alarm pinged his wrist pad. "Localized grav fluctuation," the AI announced calmly. "Sector, Imperial Arboretum." Of course it was. He bolted. The Arboretum sat like a pocket world near the crown of the ship, a garden preserved under a glass dome. Trees from 9 worlds arched over winding paths, their leaves catching artificial sunlight. Delicate birds flitted among bioluminescent flowers. And in the center, standing on a stone bridge over a koi pond, was Empress Neriel. The grav field bucked. One moment she stood with perfect poise, discussing diplomatic arrangements with an ambassador. The next, her feet left the ground, and both women flailed as down became sideways. Everyone hold on to something, Leo shouted as he burst through the entrance. Guards scrambled for railings. The ambassador shrieked, clutching a tree. Neriel's gown snapped around her legs as she drifted dangerously toward the glass dome. Leo hit the manual override panel, fingers flying. The sabotage routines he'd been tracking flickered across the display, trying to reroute his commands. You again, he muttered. Persistent little troll. Engineer Hart! Neriel's voice carried across the tumbling air. This had better not be another of your jokes. I only pull harmless pranks, he shouted back. Attempted regicide is strictly above my pay grade. He keyed in a hard reset, rerouting the Arboretum's grav grid through an auxiliary line. The system resisted, then buckled. Artificial gravity reasserted itself with a vengeance. Everyone dropped. Neriel landed with considerably more grace than anyone else, but only because Leo lunged, sliding across the stone path to catch her as she fell. They collided chest to chest this time instead of tangling on the floor. For a moment they were nose to nose, her hands braced on his shoulders, his on her waist, hearts pounding. The world steadied around them. Trees stopped swaying. Guards regained their feet. Third time's the charm, Leo said breathlessly. You okay? Neriel's pupils were wide, breath quick, but her voice remained composed. I am uninjured. She realized where his hands were and drew back just enough that they rested on air instead of her curves. You are remarkably consistent at being exactly where you should not be, she said. Hey, this time I didn't crawl under anything, he said. Progress. The ambassador gaped at them, hair askew. Your radiance, Return to your quarters, Neriel told her coolly. We will reconvene negotiations when the ship is no longer attempting acrobatics. As the ambassador fled, Neriel turned to Leo. That was not a random failure, was it? Nope, he said. Same signature as the grav ring. Someone is playing games with your gravity. Games with my life, she corrected. Same difference from where I'm standing, he said. Her gaze flicked briefly to the hands he still hadn't quite dropped. He withdrew them hastily. Sorry, he said. Autopilot. You have saved me twice in one cycle, she said, slowly. Either you are astonishingly competent, or the universe has developed a sense of humor at my expense. Little of column A, little of column B, he said. For a heartbeat, she looked like she might laugh aloud. Instead, she straightened, all Empress again. Find the saboteur, Engineer Hart, she said, before the ship decides to fling me into the sun. Yes, ma'am, he said. Though if it tries, I'm charging overtime. Back in the maintenance network, Leo dug deeper. The override strings pointed to a cluster of consoles along the ship's spine, places with both engineering access and command visibility. Whoever was messing with Neriel's gravity liked to use scheduled diagnostic windows, hiding their changes in legitimate traffic. He traced one particularly nasty loop to a node just below the primary command deck. To get there, he had to crawl through a junction tunnel, barely wide enough for his shoulders. Why is everything on this ship designed for people half my size? He grumbled, wriggling past bundles of cables. His wrist pad pinged. Are you stuck? Neriel's voice came through softly, amusement threading under her words. Absolutely not, he lied. I am heroically navigating your arteries. I see your vitals on my console, she said. Your heart rate suggests frustration. Your ship is wired like a plate of noodles, he said. Whoever laid these conduits needs therapy. Those conduits predate my reign, she said. Insult the dead all you wish. In that case, they did their best, he amended. But they weren't thinking about 6-foot humans. What have you discovered? Your saboteur is cautious but arrogant, Leo said. They keep hiding their overrides one level deeper than the last. Whoever it is knows the ship and thinks they're smarter than everyone else. That narrows the suspect list to half my officers, Neriel said dryly. Don't worry, he said. I'll insult more of them as we go. He reached the node, a junction box glowing with diagnostic lights. Someone had removed the security seal and replaced it with a perfect counterfeit. Leo popped it, revealing a nest of fine wires spliced into the main control bus. Found your culprit's workbench, he said. Can you trace it? She asked. Eventually, he said. but that means being here a while. If the grav grid crashes while I'm elbow deep, we might both have bad days. I will hold manual override from the command throne, she said. Continue. And Leo? He paused, surprised by the use of his name. Yes, Your Radiance? Do not fall, she said. I would prefer not to appoint a new court mechanic. Warmth slid through his chest in a way he refused to label. I'll do my best to disappoint the Reaper, he said lightly, and went to work. It took hours. Leo's hands cramped from delicate manipulation as he bypassed each hidden circuit. He mapped their origin points across the ship, building a pattern. Whoever designed the overrides had used redundant pathways, bouncing signals through innocuous systems, lighting, environmental controls, even music channels. When he finally compiled the route, one endpoint kept flashing, a private console on Deck 2, restricted access, used only by senior staff. He cross-checked the access log. A single ID appeared over and over. Admiral Corvin Hale, master of fleet logistics and trusted advisor to Neriel for over a decade. Leo stared at the name. Huh, he said quietly. That's awkward. Report, Neriel said. Bad news, Leo replied, crawling backward out of the conduit. The saboteur is one of your own. Admiral Hale's console has been puppeteering your gravity. Silence met him. He imagined her sitting on the command throne, knuckles white on the armrests. Are you certain? She asked. As certain as I am that grav rings have a grudge against your wardrobe, he said. Someone could have forged his credentials, but that's a lot of work when you can just recruit the guy. Hale is ambitious, she said slowly. But he has always been loyal. Maybe he thinks those two things are compatible, Leo said. Power makes people creative. A long breath crackled over the link. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than vacuum. I will summon him to my private strategy chamber, she said. You will be there. If he attempts anything, I want the only person who understands these sabotage codes present. Do you want me in armor? He asked. Because I look terrible in alloy. Bring your tools, she said. They seemed to frighten him more. Neriel's strategy chamber was smaller than the throne hall, but no less impressive. Holoscreens floated in a circle, displaying fleet positions, supply chains, and a live schematic of the Crown of Dawn. The air smelled faintly of spice and ozone. Neriel stood at the center in a fitted battle coat, the green of her skin mirrored in the dark fabric. Her crown was simpler today, a circlet of gold hugging her brow. Leo waited near a side console, toolkit at his feet, pretending to study energy metrics while his heart pretended not to slam against his ribs. Admiral Hale arrived right on time. He was older, with silver at his temples, and the sort of posture that said he'd been giving orders longer than Leo had been alive. His eyes flicked briefly to the human, then away again, lips thinning. You summoned me, Your Radiance, he said, bowing. I did, Neriel replied. Twice in one cycle my ship has attempted to humiliate me publicly, once nearly fatally. I am most interested in the cause. Engineering negligence, surely, Hale said, with a pointed glance at Leo. Funny, Leo said, not looking up. The failure points all seem to originate from your console, Admiral. If I didn't know. Better, I'd think you were redecorating the gravitational constants. Hale stiffened. How dare you accuse... I dare because the data says so, Leo cut in. You've been inserting override commands during scheduled diagnostics. Clever work. Shame about the grav ring, though. It grabbed the wrong thing. Neriel's gaze never left Hale. Why? She asked simply. The Admiral's jaw worked. He chose his target carefully. With respect, Your Radiance, you have grown... soft. Leo blinked. Touring maintenance decks? Speaking directly to crew? Hale continued. Assigning humans to positions of influence. You laugh in public. You allow yourself to be seen in moments of vulnerability. Respect for the throne weakens. Neriel's expression did not change, but there was a stillness in her that made the hairs on Leo's neck rise. So you decided, she said quietly, to scare me back into my proper place. Not harm you, Hale protested. Never that. Only to remind the court and you that gravity itself answers to you, not the other way around. By rigging my gardens and docks to fail, she said, "by trapping me in a grav ring like a misloaded crate." He flinched. "I miscalculated," he admitted. "I expected a minor stumble, a spectacle, nothing more. No true danger. The systems weren't supposed to—" "Systems frequently fail in ways their designers did not intend," Leo interrupted. "Ask any burned-out mechanic, or anyone who's been stuck in an angry metal hoop." Niriel's attention shifted to him for a heartbeat, then back to Hale. "You endangered not only me," she said, "but my guests, my guards, and my crew. You made my ship itself an accomplice to your lesson." "It was for the good of the Empire," he insisted. "Funny," Leo said softly. "That's what saboteurs always say." Hale's eyes flashed. "You will be silent, human." "No," Niriel said. "He will not." She stepped closer, each word measured. "You wished for an empress who ruled from unassailable height, never laughing, never visible, never touched by circumstance. You preferred a symbol to a person." "That symbol holds the Empire together," Hale said. "If they see you as a woman who can fall, they may forget to kneel." Leo risked a glance at her. Something in her face shifted, an old, tired pain surfacing. "I do not require your sabotage to remind me of the weight I carry," she said, "and I will not tolerate betrayal disguised as tutelage." With a flick of her wrist, she brought up a hollow screen showing the trace of commands Leo had compiled. It painted an undeniable pattern. Hale's shoulders sagged. "So that is your decision," he said. "My decision," she replied, "is that you will leave this ship under guard and stand before the council for judgment. They may choose exile, imprisonment, or worse. It is no longer my concern." He opened his mouth, perhaps to beg, perhaps to curse. The guard stepped in, hands on weapon hilts. Hale turned a look of pure venom on Leo. "This is your doing," he spat. "Buddy, you're the one who told gravity to misbehave," Leo said. "I just read the log." He didn't see Hale glance at his wrist, fingers twitching, but he saw the effect. The deck lurched. The gravity grid shuddered violently. Holoscreens wobbled. The ship's AI chimed an alarm. "Unscheduled grav field disruption," it announced calmly. "Compensating. Error. Compensating." Hale had triggered a deadman override, burying a final command deep in the system. The strategy chamber's grav field cut out completely. They all lifted from the floor. Leo's stomach dropped as his boots left the deck. He grabbed for the nearest console, fingers catching a handhold. Niriel's coat flared as she drifted, crown tilting. Hale twisted away from the guards, pushing off the wall with practiced ease. Apparently he'd prepared for this possibility. Weapons were useless in 0G. Recoil shoved you as much as your target. The guards flailed, trying to adjust. "Heart!" Niriel snapped, hair clouding around her like a comet tail. "Get us down!" "Working on it!" he yelled back, shoving himself toward the main control panel. "Some idiot tied this chamber's grav to your throne's biometric lock." "That would be you," she said. "Then past me was a genius and a fool," he muttered. Hale slammed into a guard, ripping the sidearm from his belt. He didn't aim at the Empress. Too dangerous. He aimed at the panel Leo was clawing toward. The shot went wide in the drifting chaos, but close enough that the console spat sparks. Leo flinched. "Hale!" Niriel shouted. "Stand down!" "I will not see the Empire rot because you let them see you bleed," Hale snarled, shoving off toward her. "Some of us remember what the throne is meant to be." He grabbed her by one arm, yanking her into a spin. For a terrifying second, she was just a body tumbling through weightless space. No guards, no gown, no crown. Just a woman off balance. Leo didn't think. He launched himself. They collided mid-air, three bodies knotting together. Leo caught Niriel around the waist, wrenching her free of Hale's grip. Momentum sent Leo and Niriel careening toward the wall while Hale rebounded off another console. They hit hard. Pain flared along Leo's shoulder where it met metal, but he managed to tuck her head into his chest, taking most of the impact. "Let go of me!" she snapped automatically. "Not planning on redecorating with Empress blood," he gritted out. "Hold still!" He used their rebound to push off again, aiming this time at the throne dais. His fingers snagged the carved gold armrest, arresting their spin. "Put your hand on the seal," he said, hauling her closer to the biometric pad built into the throne's side. "This is the least dignified use of the symbol of office in recorded history," she muttered, slapping her palm onto the reader. "Trust me," Leo said. "It's about to become more dignified than the alternative." The pad flashed green. The grav grid roared back to life. Everyone dropped at once. Leo, Niriel, and the throne crashed to the floor in a tangled heap. The impact drove the breath from his lungs again. He was starting to resent gravity personally. Hail hit harder. He'd been mid-push when the field re-engaged, and the sudden downward yank slammed him into the deck. His stolen blaster skittered away. Guards pounced, pinning him before he could recover. Shackles clamped around his wrists with a satisfying click. Niriel pushed herself upright, hair mussed, coat skewed. Leo lay sprawled at her feet, staring at the ceiling. "You," she said, looking down at him, "have an extraordinary talent for being my landing cushion." "Happy to be of service," he rasped. "Tiny request. If we could restrict future falls to something soft, like pillows or bureaucrats, I'd appreciate it." Despite everything, betrayal, danger, a nearly fatal zero-G brawl, she laughed. Not the small, reluctant huffs he'd coaxed from her before, but a bright, startled sound. Everyone in the room froze. Hale stared at her, shocked. "You laugh," he said, as though that were the greatest crime. "I survive," she replied, composure returning. "That is the only standard that matters today." She gestured to the guards. "Remove him. Secure all his access. The council will hear of this treachery before the cycle ends." As they dragged Hale away, he spat one last time in Leo's direction. "Enjoy your influence while it lasts, human. When they tire of your jokes, they'll remember what you are." Leo propped himself up on his elbows. "Guy really doesn't like me," he said. "His opinion is no longer a factor in anything that matters," Niriel said. She extended a hand. Leo stared at it for a moment, then took it. Her grip was firm, warm, calloused from training he'd only seen in reports. "You have prevented my death twice and my humiliation 3 times in a single day," she said. "Perhaps I misjudged the value of human irreverence." "Maybe it's our superpower," he said. "We laugh at the universe until it gets confused and lets us live." Her fingers lingered a heartbeat longer than protocol required before she released him. "Your methods are wildly unorthodox," she said. "Your speech is appalling. Your uniform is an insult to tailoring." "Thanks," he said. "I work hard on all 3. And yet," she said, "I find myself oddly grateful." "Careful," he said. "Compliments from Empresses go straight to my head." She smiled fully this time. It transformed her face, softening lines he hadn't realized were there, turning the fierce ruler into someone startlingly human. "Do not let it," she replied. "Your head is needed for more repairs." "Understood." Official reports moved quickly. Within hours, Hale was on a shuttle bound for the capital, under guard and under sedation. The council would strip titles, debate charges, argue about what it meant that one of their own had tried to weaponize embarrassment. Unofficially, the story raced through the ship at faster-than-light speed. Some said the human had tackled the Empress mid-air while cracking jokes. Others claimed he'd shut down the grav grid with nothing but a wrench and obscene language. A few insisted they'd seen Niriel laughing as she fell. Leo knew better. The truth was messier and funnier, and somehow more serious than any rumor. He sprawled in his maintenance alcove, shoulder-bandaged, wrist pads scrolling with new orders. "Effective immediately," the notice read. "Engineer Leo Hart is assigned as Chief Systems Architect for the Crown of Dawn. All requests for major maintenance or upgrades will route through his office." "Office," he snorted. The alcove barely fit him and his tools. A new line appeared, appended minutes later with Niriel's personal sigil. Additionally, Hart is granted access to restricted decks 1 through 3 and permitted direct audience with the throne without intermediary when matters of ship safety are concerned. He whistled low. That'll make me popular. Footsteps approached. He glanced up to see the Empress's senior aide, a thin man with steel-gray hair and nerves of glass. Engineer Hart, the aide said tightly. Her Radiance requests your presence in her private observatory. Am I being promoted again or finally disciplined? Leo asked, gathering his toolkit. The aide's mouth twitched. I am no longer capable of predicting such things. Relatable, Leo said. The private observatory sat just above the Starlight deck, smaller and darker, designed for solitude. The glass dome here showed nothing but stars, no overlays, no tactical data, just infinite black pricked by light. Neriel stood alone in the center, without guards, without crown. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She wore a simple tunic and trousers in deep midnight blue, more suited to a pilot than a monarch. Leo stopped at the threshold. Should I be seeing this? He asked quietly. Close the door, she said. Leave the titles outside. He obeyed, sudden nerves fluttering. Without the trappings of power, she looked somehow more dangerous and more approachable at the same time. This is where I remember I am a person, she said, turning back to the stars. Before I am Empress, before I am symbol, before admirals decide my dignity is their property. Nice view, he said, because confronting raw vulnerability with sincerity was beyond his social skill set. She huffed a breath of laughter. You are incapable of solemnity, aren't you? Only on days that end in yai, he said. Silence. Stretched. Comfortable for once. I read your personnel file, she said eventually. You were not born into service. Doc rat on a mining moon, he said. Grew up fixing whatever broke. Sometimes that was machines, sometimes people's tempers. And yet you now advise a throne ship, she said. Galaxy's weird, he said. If you stay alive long enough, it keeps escalating the joke. She turned, examining him with clear, assessing eyes. Hale was not entirely wrong, she said. The throne must inspire awe, fear at times, distance. Yet the more distance I place between myself and my people, the more they become stories instead of lives. Hard to care about a story when your grav ring's trying to eat you, he said. Exactly, she said. You dragged me, literally, through two of the most humiliating moments of my reign, and I am still here. The ship still flies. The Empire still exists. And your crew has the best gossip of their careers, he added. They do, she agreed, a real smile curling her lips. But they also saw that when systems failed, their Empress did not simply vanish behind protocol. She cursed, she grabbed for handholds, she survived alongside them. That scares the Hales of the world, Leo said. If people realize you're human, they might start asking for more humans in charge. And if they realize humans can be effective, she said, they may stop treating your species as amusing pets. He shrugged. I make a very dignified pet. Do you? She asked. I seem to recall you sneezing grease in my presence. Refined grease, he said. High class. The laugh that shook her now was quiet but deep, coming from somewhere near the armor she kept around her heart. You are impossible, she said. I get that a lot. She stepped closer, studying him. I cannot publicly elevate you beyond your current position, she said. The court would riot, and I have had enough unrest for one cycle. Fine by me, he said. Too much paperwork above this pay grade. However, she continued, I can ensure your voice is heard when it matters. Systems, safety, and perspective. Perspective? He repeated. When my admirals advise out of fear, she said, I would hear from someone who has seen me stuck in a grav ring and still does not tremble when I scowl. I definitely tremble, he said. I just do it internally, where it's less embarrassing. Acceptable, she said. They stood shoulder to shoulder then, looking out at the scattered lights of distant suns. You know, Leo said, most rulers would have had me executed before I ever crawled under that ring. Most rulers are cowards, she said simply. They cannot bear to be seen as fallible. And you can? He asked. I cannot bear to be lied to, she replied, about my ship, my empire, or myself. He nodded, slowly. For what it's worth, Neriel. She glanced at him, surprised at the use of her name. You handled all of this better than most engineers I know, he finished. People panic when things jam. You didn't. You complained, threatened, insulted me. Sure, but you didn't panic. High praise, she said dryly. Highest I've got, he said. Officially, the records of the Gravring incident remained dry. Mechanical anomaly, Gravlock Model 47 malfunction. Casualty count, 0. Collateral, 1 ceremonial gown, irreparable. Corrective action, upgrade all Gravlocks. Appoint dedicated systems architect. Neriel read the report in her private console, lips pressing together. The temptation to delete, rewrite, erase the humiliation entirely tugged at her. Instead, she flagged it for permanent archive. Let the historians make of it what they would. As she moved to close the file, a small notification blinked in the corner of the screen. Unauthorized comment appended. Source, Heart, L. Neriel sighed and opened it, already bracing herself. The message was only one line. Recommendation, do not stand inside any grav apparatus without certified human supervision. Underneath, a second line. P.S. Your radiance. If the ship ever eats another part of your wardrobe, I charge triple. Her mouth fell open. You presumptuous little... She stopped, laughter bubbling before she could finish the insult. The guards outside her chamber stiffened at the sound, exchanging nervous glances. Rumor said the Empress had laughed more in the last cycle than in the previous year. Inside, Neriel shook her head, still smiling, and typed a response. Counter recommendation. If you are present when such an event occurs, your hazard pay will be considered. She hovered over the send icon, then added, do not quote this as precedent. The console chimed. Message sent. Somewhere in the ship's underbelly, Leo's wrist pad buzzed. He read the reply, grinned so hard his face hurt, and immediately almost walked into an open access hatch. Worth it, he muttered, rubbing his shoulder. Life aboard the Crown of Dawn settled into a new normal. Systems hummed, upgraded gravlocks behaved, and the rumor of a human mechanic who made the Empress laugh became part of the ship's folklore. Leo's days filled with inspections, code audits, and the occasional emergency where something exploded in a more traditional way. Every few shifts, a priority ping would pull him to Neriel's side. Sometimes it was genuinely about systems. Sometimes it was about politics disguised as systems. Explain why rerouting power from the ceremonial floodlights to the medical bay would provoke rebellion, she'd ask, and he'd translate engineer logic into court language. Other times, she summoned him to the observatory with 2 cups of bitter spiced tea and no agenda. They say humans are naturally optimistic, she'd say. We're naturally stubborn. He'd reply, optimism is just stubbornness about the future. He never forgot who she was or what she could order with a word. She never forgot that he had seen her helpless and humiliated and chosen to treat it as a problem to fix, not a weakness to exploit. Trust grew in that narrow space between their roles. One evening, as he left her chamber after a particularly absurd debate over carpet thickness on Deck 4, it affects acoustics, she'd insisted. He paused in the corridor. The idea that had been tickling the back of his brain finally demanded air. He turned back. Neriel, he said softly. She looked up from the console, brows lifting. Yes? You know that guy was wrong, right? Leo said. Hale. When he said seeing you fall would make people forget to kneel. Her gaze cooled. You are treading dangerously close to flattery, Leo Hart. It's not flattery if it's just physics, he said. Things that are untouchable feel fragile, distant, easy to resent. Things that can fall and get back up. People remember those. You equate your Empress with resilient scrap metal, she said. Hey, scrap metal holds the galaxy together, he replied. She considered that for a long moment, then nodded once. Very well, she said. I will be resilient scrap metal. That's the spirit, he said. Do not ever call me that in public, she added. Wouldn't dream of it, he lied. Weeks later, as the Crown of Dawn sailed between stars like a jeweled spear, a quiet moment found Niriel alone again in the observatory. The stars outside burned indifferent. Inside, the air hummed with the ship's steady pulse. She thought of all the things that had refused to budge lately: grav rings, political factions, centuries-old protocols about how empresses should behave. For the first time, she felt something like curiosity. What else might move if pushed with the right mix of audacity and humor? The door chime sounded. "Enter," she said. Leo stepped in, tablet tucked under one arm, a smear of oil across his forehead like a lopsided war mark. "Got your latest systems report," he said. "Also, someone tried to schedule you for a ceremonial inspection of the lower sanitation vats. I deleted it on principle." "You have no authority to alter my schedule," she said. "I'll restore it if you really want to go admire recycled wastewater," he offered. "I will allow this single act of treason," she said, "purely for hygiene." He joined her at the window, shoulder just far enough away to be respectful, just close enough that their reflections overlapped in the glass. Green skin, human tan, silver hair, messy brown. "You know," he said, "if your enemies ever found out how many times gravity has tried to assassinate you, they'd feel very left out." "Let them," she said. "The ship has better aim." "And worse timing," he added. She glanced sidelong at him. "Leo Hart." "Yes, Your Radiance." "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" he asked. "For unjamming more than my grav locks," she replied. He swallowed, caught off guard. "Any time." Somewhere deep in the bowels of the Crown of Dawn, a sensor pinged softly, registering a minor fluctuation in a non-critical system. Leo's wrist pad buzzed. "Duty calls," he said. "Try not to get trapped in anything while I'm gone. Grav coils, political metaphors, murderous admirals. Take a break." "No promises," she said. He started toward the door, then paused. "One more thing," he said without turning. "If the universe throws you at a wall again, I'll be there." "As my landing cushion?" she asked. "As your mechanic," he said, "and as the idiot who refuses to let you get stuck alone." When the door slid shut behind him, Niriel turned back to the stars, a slow smile spreading across her face. Gravity, she decided, could be negotiated with. And somewhere along the way, in the ridiculous, impossible process of getting unstuck, an Empress and a human had begun to rewrite the rules of how rulers and subjects behaved. From royal dignity to cosmic chaos, one human's relentless humor had done what no treaty, no war, no ceremony ever had. It had made an Empress laugh, and more dangerously, it had made her want to keep laughing. The Crown of Dawn sailed on, engines burning bright, its systems humming under the watchful eye of a mechanic promoted into trouble. And in the quiet spaces between crises, between grav malfunctions and admiralty schemes, Niriel Cathar found herself wondering, with a mix of dread and anticipation, what other impossible things this human might manage to unstick. The End subscribed for more HFY sci-fi romances where one reckless human, one powerful alien, and one bad decision at a time managed to save the galaxy.